Hi there, welcome to today's workplace series. Today, as a leader, you're going to be challenged. You're going to be asked to consider whether you're sending mixed signals and how does that impact the team that you're leading. So the recently released State of the Future of Work report paints a pretty grim picture of how workplaces around Australia are faring. Now, the research was based on 1,400 workers and it spans all states, all territories. And the research identified 4 central themes. People are feeling unsafe, unwell, uncertain, and there are also opportunities. What they found through the research is that not only do people feel unsafe, but discrimination is pretty prevalent. As well, how work is currently structured is impacting the mental health and well-being of Australians. Workers have limited understanding of how artificial intelligence and automation is going to impact their jobs, and they're also unclear about how to prepare for that. Lastly, despite all those issues, the study found that Australian workers do see opportunities to build happier workplaces and more satisfied working lives due to the prevalence and the increase of workplace flexibility. So the good news is it's not all bad news. And the researchers did outline a series of recommendations and policy considerations to help address the challenges that the report identified. What struck me though when I was reading the report is that many of the issues that were identified, they're not new. They've just been amplified over the last number of years because of the challenges that we faced. And much of this is about the organisation's culture and the leader's role in shaping that organisational culture. In one of the programs that I run, I ask 2 questions. And they're a binary question, so it's a simple yes or no. I ask the participants, does your organisation, your company, have stated values? And the second question, if you do have those organisational values, do your senior leaders live up to those stated values? Now, how do you think most people would answer? Well, it's interesting because with question 1, most people say yes, their organisation does have stated values. Question 2, sadly, the answer is primarily no. Whilst there's stated values, the senior leaders aren't living up to those values, nor are they being held to account. So think about it. We've got values out there, and there's a lot of talk about leadership, but we're still seeing a gap between what's being said and what people are actually experiencing. You don't have to look too far to see examples of poor leadership. And I'm sure if I asked you, have you experienced poor leadership, you're likely to say yes. Back in 2018, organisational psychologist from Wharton University, Adam Grant wrote, and I'm quoting here, love this quote, "When assholes win, it's because we let them get away with it. We let it happen when we build cultures that only prize individual achievements. We promote people who produce short-term results, ignoring the long-term damage they do. We keep people around who treat other people like dirt because they're indispensable, when that's usually a myth of their own creation." End of quote. As a leader, you need to be clear on your values, but not just that. You need to be clear, how are you living those values? How do you live those values through decision-making, through how you hire, recruit, promote, reward, how you interact with others, how you emphasize issues, where you spend your energy and your time. Your behavioral footprint is leaving an impact on your team members and on the leaders in your team as well. Because we know, and I've talked about this before, leaders who ill-treat leaders in their team, those leaders are more likely to ill-treat the people in their team. So you want to challenge yourself. Do you need to be more consistent in what you say and do? Are you sending mixed signals to your team about what actually matters and what behavioural standards are acceptable? Do you need to be more consistent? Are you stepping away from the things that you really need to step into? Think about it for a minute. Are you saying that you want that sustainable and flexible work environment, but actually what you're rewarding is long hours, overtime, that kind of always on culture? Are you saying that, oh, I value people, I'm going to put people first, but actually really all you value is output, output, output? Do you say you want teamwork, but all you reward is individual recognition? Do you say that you want continuous improvement and you want your team to learn, but actually you really only want to hear the good news when things are going well? We're social creatures, and so we're socialized into ways of feeling, thinking, and doing. And in new environments, we can pick up on those social cues about how we behave. So if you say one thing and reward a behavior that is contrary to it, your team's going to notice that gap. And they're going to likely follow that reward trail or exit the organization because they don't enjoy working for you or what it is that you stand for. If you want a healthy, thriving environment, you need to be able to identify your values. You need to know how you live them at work. And just as you want to know your values, it helps to understand your team members' values too. This aids team building. It provides the opportunity to understand where potentially there might be a values disconnect. And once you understand where there are values disconnect, you can also then work through and better understand people, and also understand perhaps why they're not feeling comfortable voicing their opinion or why they're not feeling comfortable to challenge things. Research shows that we can stop being our authentic selves when we're in an environment where it doesn't feel safe to show up and be who we need to be. And yet when we stop being our authentic selves, that causes psychological stress. And that can have ongoing ramifications for that person's mental health and well-being, for their confidence, for the quality of the output, but also for how they're going to do the work in a way that is meaningful and adds value to the organization. So when you think about it, you need to understand your values. You need to understand how you're living your values. You want to understand your team members' values, understand where there might be potential disconnects, where here's their value, but they don't feel like they can live that value at work so that you can provide the support they need. And then when you think about that, when you've got all that in place, that aids collaboration. Because we very quickly assess someone as whether they're friend or foe in our tribe or out of our tribe. And when your team members know each other's values, it builds understanding, trust, connection, makes it easier to collaborate, as the team members can better consider differing perspectives and they're more ready to assume that their team member has good intent, rather than assuming that because they don't quite understand that person or where they're coming from, they assume ill intent. When your team members genuinely collaborate, they're going to open themselves up to different ideas. They're going to recognize that better outcomes are the result of getting input from a diverse range of stakeholders and team members and having those ideas debated and tested. All of that elevates decision making, because when people are clear on their values, how they live them, they become the guiding compass that people use to make decisions. And that applies in the work environment too. So if you spend time at work talking about values with your team and get really specific around the behavioral traits that support the living of those values, that's going to help decision making. So you can strive to achieve a collaborative and a values-based environment through really healthy conversations. One where the outcome is about what's good for all that's involved, rather than focusing on what benefits a few. Now, there's different ways that you can assess values. You just have a conversation around values. One of the tools that I really like to use is the VIA Character Strength Survey. So it's the Values in Action Survey. Well, the great news is you can also access that tool for free. And you get people to do the tool. Then you sit down and you have a facilitated conversation around what are your values? How do you live those values at work? How can I support you to live your values at work? This facilitated conversation is just the start, and it's a fabulous first step. to really understanding your team and helping your team understand each other. I always love the quote from the Dalai Lama who said, "Open your arms to change, but don't let go of your values." Take care. I'll see you next week.